So, love does not have a rule book, but it does have attachment styles, which is basically the next closest thing. Because, in fact, your attachment style is essentially the subconscious set of rules you have for how to give love, how to receive love, how to express love, how to really deeply connect, what your needs are, and what you tend to basically expect from other people in relationships. And today, we're actually going to step into the complex but also really interesting journey of what happens when a securely attached person dates a dismissive avoidant. We will cover 6 core things that are foundational to this relationship. And also, we will talk about whether or not this relationship is likely to survive the test of time. So, first and foremost, there tend to be some really unique features in this relationship. If you've been following this channel for quite some time, you know that one of the biggest things that actually impacts whether or not we are likely to invest in a romantic relationship long term is essentially if somebody that we are in a relationship with is mirroring back to us our subconscious comfort zone for how we treat ourselves in a relationship. In other words, if you are somebody who's very anxiously attached to others, chances are you're in a very avoidant relationship to yourself, constantly deprioritizing yourself, constantly putting your own feelings and needs on the back burner, which actually means that because the subconscious mind feels very attracted to what is familiar and tends to want to invest in what's familiar, because you're in this avoidant relationship to self, you're actually more likely to be attracted to and invest in avoidantly attached individuals. And when we take that analogy and we apply it to the DA or dismissive avoidant and securely attached relationship, one of the first things you need to know is securely attached people tend to actually be most attracted to other securely attached people because securely attached people have an actual securely attached relationship to themselves. In other words, they have a healthy relationship to their own feelings and needs. They don't repress them, they don't put them last. They also have a healthy relationship to what it means to be there, to contribute to others, to allow other people to rely on them, also to rely on other people. They have a healthy interdependent foundation for how they expect to give and receive love, meaning that securely attached people generally tend to be attracted to other securely attached people who are also going to mirror these healthy traits back to them. And it's part of why you'll see securely attached people early on in a relationship. If they see a huge imbalance of red flags to green flags, first, they will address those red flags. They will have dialogues and conversations about those red flags to try to say, is this really not working? What's going on here? They're actually vetting somebody when they first start dating them. And if those red flags don't get resolved and turn into green flags, let's just say an example would be that if a dismissive avoidant in this relationship dynamic is communicating very sporadically, a securely attached person would show up and say, hey, I'm enjoying our connection. I like where this is going, but I'm also looking for somebody who can really show up more consistently with communication. And I want to see if that's you. I want to know if that's something that we can work on. And they will watch, they will vet. Does the person rise to the occasion? And does that what was a red flag of the sporadic communication turn into a green flag where the person rises to the occasion and actually starts communicating more? Or does it not? And if they don't see some big changes around the things that they are concerned about when dating a dismissive avoidant person, they won't stay in that relationship because their subconscious comfort zone is yearning for help in relationship dynamics, for consistency. And so I'm going to unpack like what actually happens in general with this relationship. But by the same token, dismissive avoidance, they sort of have this sort of split dynamic within their own subconscious mind where they're yearning for harmony, they're yearning for um a healthy relationship, something that makes them feel safe and secure, something they can derive comfort and stability from in a relationship, which can make the securely attached person actually very attractive to the dismissive avoidant person, especially as well because dismissive avoidants really don't like conflict. They tend to very much fear conflict. They do not want a relationship where there's always fighting, always arguments. They do not like that. They don't invest in those relationships long term. So one part of their subconscious mind tends to actually be in this space where their deep needs are often met by this person, which is another factor that drives attraction. But dismissive avoidants at the end of the day are still quite emotionally unavailable to themselves. And so this can create this sort of caveat as to whether or not this relationship can actually survive the test of time. And I'll talk to you about that at the end. Now, there's 6 major things that we'll tend to see take place in this relationship dynamic. Number one, we will see that some of the core wounds the dismissive avoidant has, if this relationship does continue on with the securely attached person, if the dismissive avoidant does rise to the occasion, tries to be more consistent and show up better in dating the securely attached person with things like consistency around communication, we'll actually see that through being exposed to a securely attached person repetitively over time, it does have the capacity to help recondition some of the different core wounds. I'll give you one example of this. Dismissive avoidants tend to have a really big core wound called I am defective. And it's sort of like something is wrong with me. And where this core wound comes from is if a child is constantly exposed to childhood emotional neglect, what will end up taking place is they can't conceive of um, their parents or their caregivers being emotionally unavailable to them. So instead, when they are exposed to childhood emotional neglect, they don't know how to fault the caregivers for that. They're not like, oh, my parents aren't emotionally available to me. So children personalize everything. So instead, what happens is a child who is yearning for connection, what they do is they say, okay, there must be something wrong with me. I must be defective at my core, that I'm wanting this from my parents, wanting this from my caregivers, but they are unable to give it to me. It must be a me problem. And so they will usually have this kind of internalized sense of shame that comes with this. Now, securely attached people, they tend to be very accepting of other people. And if you have a lot of shame wounding, and then you're around somebody repetitively over time who's constantly accepting you, accepting your flaws, accepting the things that you're shaming yourself for. And I want to really highlight the difference here between acceptance and standards, right? Securely attached people still have good standards. They'll still say to somebody, hey, I want to communicate more. I need more consistency. But they won't shame the person in the process. They won't say, what's wrong with you? You don't communicate enough. They'll say, hey, I enjoy the connection with you. I want to communicate more. So there's their approach to this dynamic is to be accepting while also holding on to their standards of what they're expecting in a relationship. And those are not mutually exclusive things, even though we can often fall into the trap of assuming that they are. And so, the number one first thing we'll see is a lot of their approach tends to actually help the dismissive avoidant not feed into their core wounds as much, and their core wounds start to improve. Number two thing that happens in this relationship dynamic is if this relationship withstands the test of time, and again, at the end of this video, I'll tell you what will determine that or not. Um, We'll see that the securely attached person, they tend to foster healthier communication about needs in a relationship. So because they are quite aware of their own needs and they are quite emotionally literate as a general rule, they usually have a lot of good modeling growing up about how to say, hey, this is what I need. What do you need? What they actually tend to do as a byproduct of spending a lot of time around them is help the other person in the relationship become more aware of their needs as well. Because if somebody's constantly talking to you about needs in a relationship and isn't afraid to talk about them, has a healthy dialogue around them, right? Says, hey, I want to spend more quality time together. That's a big need that I have from our relationship right now. There's no like criticizing about it. There's no animosity behind it. They're communicating about their needs in a very proactive way, which lands very well with somebody's partner. And so, because of that, the dismissive avoidant often learns by proximity that, oh, I can express my needs too. And they learn how to do this in a healthier way. Now, it does take time for them to get there, but it is a big shift that we'll start to see. Number three, there does tend to be a positive impact on the dismissive avoidant if they stay in this relationship with a securely attached person on their ability to emotionally regulate. What do I mean by that? Their ability to emotionally regulate. Well, what I mean by that is that if you are in a relationship with somebody who helps you regulate, who can see when you're distressed and who can be present with you, ask you if you're okay, see if there's anything they can do to support you, if you practice actually receiving that support from somebody else, it is called co-regulation. It is what securely attached people do in healthy relationships. And it's basically a form of interdependence. And so, because the securely attached person has a great capacity to do this, because this co regulation was modeled to them in their childhood, essentially what often takes place is that fosters this co-regulatory dynamic between themselves and the dismissive avoidant attachment style, which is very valuable for the relationship dynamic. Number four, boundaries improve in this relationship. We often think that dismissive avoidants have these really extreme boundaries. And in one case or one sense of the word boundaries, they do. But they also are not good at setting small boundaries. Dismissive avoidants tend to set these huge boundaries because they don't know how to communicate about the smaller boundaries in their lives. An example would be, if they're feeling tired on a Friday evening, rather than setting the boundary, hey, I don't want to go out tonight. I'd rather just stay in and watch a movie. I'm really not feeling up to it, rather than communicating that, they'll probably just cancel the plans. Hey, I'm tired, I can't come. And so it represents this lack of communication around healthy boundaries, small boundaries. But because securely attached people are so good at this, again, over time, if this relationship withstands the test of time, securely attached people often sort of rub off on their dismissive avoidant partner, where this person may become better at setting boundaries over time. The last two things I'm going to put together, because I still have to tell you whether or not this relationship is going to work. Communication and healthier behaviors. Communication improves dramatically in this relationship. And the way that the dismissive avoidant is used to self-soothing, which is often through deactivating strategies, and then in those deactivating moments, trying to source their needs independently through things like creature comforts, like binge eating food or smoking cigarettes or whatever it might be. Um, Generally, because of co-regulation and because of this improved communication, dismissive avoidants do tend to learn to have healthier coping mechanisms and improved communication if they stay with a securely attached partner. Now, I will say as well, if you actually want to do a deep dive into this stuff, like I'm just rifling off a lot of these different characteristics, but if you actually want to learn how to move a relationship from an insecure attachment style to a secure attachment style, you can check out any of our attachment style reconditioning courses down below for free for 7 days, which will be much shorter and much more results oriented in terms of becoming secure than just dating somebody securely attached, because we'll be able to dig in to your own subconscious mind, understand the different patterns, and use really powerful tools that have worked with thousands of people in our personal development school over time to really recondition. Now, I will say one other thing. Um, how do we know? And I'll put the links there for free, by the way, for 7 days. But how do we know whether or not the dismissive avoidant and securely attached relationship will last? Well, generally, it will matter. um, Two big things will essentially matter in this relationship. Number one, is the dismissive avoidant willing to do the work with a securely attached partner? If they see their securely attached partner leading by example, the dismissive avoidant has to push a little bit outside of their comfort zone to be able to show up. Generally, I see in a lot of these relationship dynamics that the dismissive avoidant will do the work, will show up when dating a securely attached person, because they have a lot of their needs met on the positive side, fairly few negative associations to this relationship. And so they do tend to stretch themselves and actually show up here. In fact, I would say dismissive avoidants are most likely to stick to this relationship than any other attachment style relationship that they date. But it will depend on point number two, which is how dismissive avoidant somebody is. Because if somebody is a really extreme dismissive avoidant, really set in their ways, really doesn't want to do any reprogramming, doesn't want to self analyze or do the work because they have so many fears there of really getting in touch with their emotions, then we may see the dismissive avoidant subconscious comfort zone be so deeply rooted in that emotional unavailability that dating somebody emotionally unavailable just isn't a fit. And so we may see this sort of pull on one hand towards their needs being met for harmony, for a lack of conflict, for comfort, for security from this person. But if they are so emotionally unavailable and this securely attached relationship demands a degree of emotional availability and momentum and growth here, we may see the dismissive avoidant attachment style sabotage because it's just too far outside of their comfort zone. And this can be something that actually happens with any attachment style when dating is secure. So I hope this gave you all of the answers you were looking for today, help shed some light on this relationship dynamic overall. If you have more questions, please let me know in the comments down below. If you want to see more content like this about different attachment styles, dating securely attached people, please also let me know. I can't wait to hear from you. Please consider subscribing to this channel. I would love to have you as a part of the community, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.